r/ask Reddit. What's the stupidest thing someone has argued with you about? My father, in his 80s, had a heart attack and fell over in the snow. He broke his ankle and so was in the hospital for an extended period. My mother could not be convinced that he did not do this on purpose to get out of a holiday that he wasn't too keen on. He had a ducking heart attack. You can't just decide to have one just to get out of something. Is he okay? No, they're still married. The stress from the pressures of the holiday could have played a factor in his health issues. My grandpa always ended up in the hospital before or after Thanksgiving for heart attacks, and it just so happened that my grandma was a holy terror around that time as well. Definitely not on purpose, but maybe related to the hatred and stress surrounding the holiday itself. Duckman. I hope that if I ever get to the point where I routinely get heart attacks around a holiday, that I'll have the balls to tell the family I'm celebrating in the Bahamas. I almost got into fist fight with my best friend explaining the difference between a square and a rectangle. Well, you know what they say, be there or be rectangle. One that comes to mind is at my high school graduation. Our school photographer took a really good candid photo of this girl smiling up at the sky. I think we had just thrown our caps up there. They put it on the homepage of school website. A different girl I know swore the picture was of her, when it was clearly a picture of someone else. It was sad funny at the same time. She said they put this great picture of me on the website. We politely pointed out that it wasn't her. No, she was convinced it was her and wouldn't believe us. It was bizarre. Do you think she ever thinks about this and worry about seeing you again just so you don't bring it up? I would, and I know by experience it. I'm not a girl. Stop sending me pics, you sick ducks. This reminds me of a similar story at my high school. The school put a picture of my face on the homepage of the school website. Then people tried to argue it wasn't me. It was bizarre. I watched a couple break up over whether or not a chicken could be a pet. They got into this extremely heated argument, which led to them hitting each other. Eventually both of them turned to me and asked for my opinion. I said, why couldn't a chicken be a pet? I've seen videos of people having chickens as pets. The girl got pissed off at my answer and had to go have a cigarette to calm down. After that, she refused to talk to me because I sided with him. Volatile. This is the most petty argument I've read about, but honestly I would have loved to be there. This was at work and they were throwing shit at each other, yelling, and then got into a pushing fight over chickens. Did they get fired? No. You really had to do something bad to get fired from this place. They wanted low turnover rates so they could impress the shareholders. I had people who didn't show up to work for a week, people who cursed at customers, and people who stole product that didn't get fired. I tried to tell my little brother that it was spelled sword not sword. I even broke out the Webster's Unabridged to prove it to him. His reaction? Haha, your dictionary spelled it wrong. As I am the younger sibling, I can remember making these dumbest comebacks when arguing with my sister. As the older sibling, hug. Give your sister a hug for not killing you. When my brother was in 4th grade and I was in 7th grade, he was obsessed with RuneScape and with getting the ultimate sword, a scimitar. I explained to him again and again that the word was pronounced scimitar, but he insisted scimitars were a different thing. That magic sword Aladdin uses on the TV show. I tried explaining that Aladdin's sword wasn't magic, and that it was a scimitar too, to which he stubbornly insisted because it's a pun on scimitar. I gave up. Let him have his scimitar. I used to play WoW with someone who pronounced volatile in a different way every time. Violent, violated, violet. I also played League of Legends with someone who pronounced malady as emlady. It wasn't even to be funny. He just thought that's how you say it and refused to be corrected. In Trivial Pursuit game I answered USS Eisenhower or some such in response to a question about ships, and the fool reading the questions insisted I was wrong because the card said the USS Eisenhower. This was early in the game. I told her definite articles and conjunctions didn't matter, but she held firm. Other players, including her husband, were afraid to oppose her. I gave ridiculous made-up answers for the rest of the game. I would have walked away after that. Sorry, the card says the moops. That's not moops, you jerk. I tease Moors. I tease a misprint. I was watching Escape from New York. My friend got really mad that Snake Plissken was just a ripoff of Solid Snake from Metal Gear. He refused to accept the fact that Escape from New York came out like 17 years earlier and Solid Snake was inspired by Plissken. This is extremely frustrating for some reason. You have no idea how I felt during the entire argument. He threw out the fact they are both Snake. He goes by Plissken in Metal Gear Solid 2 and they both have eye patches. I tell him that Escape from New York came out in 1981. He responds with Metal Gear had a game on the NES, which was still 6 years later and didn't have Snake. Someone I work with said if they can't see drops of water on coming from something then it isn't wet. I got a damn cloth and asked if it was wet. No, there isn't any drops coming from it. So I wrung it out and got more water out of it. They didn't want to argue anymore. Imagine being that stubborn and then completely annihilated. Don't go overboard with stubbornness. Folks, it wasn't wet, but you made it wet when you wrung it out. He claimed that when you cut down a tree they immediately release all the carbon dioxide they have ever absorbed, hence trees are useless at carbon sequestration. There would be so many dead lumberjacks. Instant death. Coffin. My mother has argued with me over if we are currently arguing. Me. Please don't yell at me, Mum. I'm not yelling at you, don't tell me what I'm doing. 20 minutes later. Mum. Why are you always on the defensive when we talk? Mom. Insert completely wrong fact about me. No. Correct fact. Mom. You're always so defensive. Foo-hoo-hoo-hoo-uck. I've had this argument before, and also the argument that you're talking back to your parents when all you did was answer their question or respond in a normal way and that sparks a whole new argument. I told a co-worker that I was taking a class in archaeology and was pretty interested in majoring in it. He insisted archaeologists dug up dinosaurs. I explained, no, that's a really common mistake. Paleontologists dig up dinosaurs. Archaeologists deal with human stuff. Dude got really defensive and doubled down, quizzing me on random dinosaurs facts that he probably didn't know either, and said I would never make it as an archaeologist if I didn't know those things. His final statement was, well, what if you're digging up a building and you find a dinosaur skull? Huh, what are you going to do then? Before walking out, like dude, you would call someone else who knows about said dinosaur? Also, if I'm digging up a building and a ducking fossil from the Mesozoic era is there, we've dug too deep. Dude just couldn't accept he had made a mistake. We've dug too deep. Or you're accidentally excavating the field museum. That filtering water is unnecessary and dumping all our waste into the rivers is fine because the water cycle takes care of it. I hope he enjoys his water with a side of giardia. That's a line made up by Big Water so they can sell more of their product. Some kid tried to argue with me that babies came out of the butthole. After reading all these comments and especially this one, I just feel bad that you had to go through this. I had a 30-minute argument with a roommate once because he didn't believe a canoe was a boat. What did he think it was? That a canoe was a canoe. Full stop. He believed that boats can only be motor powered, so everything else that is propelled by a sail or etc was their own thing. He walked away when I asked him to explain sailboats lol. Hehehe. I can just imagine the epiphany he had when you said that. If he had one, he was too stubborn to admit it. Someone refused to believe that my brother and I are not identical twins. We're fraternal twins. Their argument was that we look the same, so we had to be identical. I tried to tell them that it wasn't something you can disagree with because it's ducking science, but they weren't having that. Why would you know SMH? They're obviously right. For though these people annoy me the most, even with scientific proof or proof from you they still think they know you better than you know you. That Vatican City wasn't a country after multiple Google searches. The whole class agreeing that it was and even a geography teacher telling him it was. His response? I still don't think it is because I can have my own opinion. He'd make a good politician. Got into an argument that Mises is not the plural of moose. In high school we were playing a Jeopardy game and one of the questions was the Treaty of Versailles ended this war to end all wars. I said World War I, everybody else said WW2. It culminated when my friend asked me to peek at why would they call a World War I the war to end all wars if World War II happened. I just responded with because they didn't know World War II was going to happen. We missed that question and the other team got it. Everyone knows that the plural of moose is moosen. Sheesh. Some people. Even worse is when people don't know that the plural of box is boxen. I have 2 boxen of donuts. That cheese is in fact dairy and comes from a cow, despite it looking nothing like milk. I wish I was kidding. We were in class and potatoes came into the conversation for whatever reason, but she said that potatoes were made in a factory and she was starstruck when we told her that potatoes are a plant and grow in natural environments. How to pronounce my last name? I've got a very uncommon last name. However, it's common for the area I'm in. You can tell who is from here and who isn't by the way they say my last name. Anyway, I had someone argue with me over how to pronounce it. Someone else never corrected them, so they thought they were right. No, we've just gotten tired of correcting people, so unless it's really important, we don't. But this person didn't believe me. I have an Italian last name as my dad is from there but moved to Australia, then had a family, etc. I can relate to this so much. People telling me how to pronounce my last name. That blood doesn't smell. Yes, it most certainly ducking does smell. Ever sniffed a penny? That's what blood smells like. Had they never had a nosebleed, blood in their mouth from losing a tooth, I would have been so frustrated. I've never had a nosebleed. Ask me anything. You want one? I very recently had a neighbor in my flat argue with me that Donald Glover and Childish Gambino are 2 different people. I don't even listen to his music and I even knew that they're both the same guy. Must have been thinking of Danny Glover, and he is definitely not Childish Gambino. Yep, he's elderly Gambino. Someone tried to argue that east was actually this direction, despite us having a literal compass. That idiot was me. You said east? I thought you said west. Whether or not Timbuktu is a real place, my kids insist I made it up. I've shown them maps and websites to prove it's real, but they still think I made it up. Along the same lines, I thought Albuquerque was a made up place that Bugs Bunny said, until I was 13 and a friend said it was the capital of NM. I told him it was Santa Fe. Someone I know didn't understand the meaning of objectively and subjectively and kept using it wrong. It was so annoying, so I corrected her, but she insisted that I was the one who was wrong. I had to actually look it up on internet and show it to her, and then she still didn't admit her wrong, but at least she stopped bitching about how wrong I supposedly was. Someone started an argument claiming that if identical twins are separated at birth and raised by different families, then they're not twins anymore. Just identical? I had a neighbor kid who argued with me about a car part I had replaced in my car twice, so I knew what I was talking about. He is a few years younger than me, so at the time I was probably 20 and he was 16, and I had just replaced the catalytic converter on my car. He insisted it was called a catalyst converter and not a catalytic converter. We argued for probably 15 minutes about it, and it was infuriating how dumb he was. I even showed him proof that the part is called a catalytic converter, and when we searched it with his terminology it suggested catalytic instead of catalyst. He still argued and it just made me so angry. Are you sure it's not a Catholic converter? No, it's a Cadillac converter. It makes your car more luxurious. My mother argued with me about the hours of operation for the retail chain I've been working at for 10 years at the time. She thought they were closed on a particular holiday, but in reality they only close on Christmas. Half days on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, not that particular day. Eventually I turned to my father and told him to ignore mom and go to the store to get chips or carrots or whatever it was the party was low on. Which was the catalyst for the argument. They were open. Dad got the snacks, and I was left feeling like my mom had no idea what I do for a living. I sincerely hope it wasn't even one of those holidays like MLK Day or President's Day, where banks are closed but nothing else is, like St. Patrick's Day or Cinco de Mayo. I told someone from church about a pen pal sending me foreign music. She was worried that I might be listening to sexual lyrics without realizing it, and subconsciously poisoning my mind with harmful thoughts. I disagreed. Oh, life in the Bible Belt. I have no clue what this is saying, but suddenly I want to fill every hole my body has with genitalia. Someone tried to convince me that they could run a mile in 3 minutes. After I called her out saying the fastest was 3 minutes and 43 seconds, she then argued that the fastest mile was actually 1 minute. Did you point out that the person would have to be running 60 miles per hour to achieve that? Someone once tried to convince me that Nicolas Cage was in the Fellowship of the Ring. I was like, do you know what the Lord of the Rings is? Elves, hobbits, Gandalf. Are you sure that you know who Nicolas Cage is? Like, are you confusing him with Viggo Mortensen? No. He apparently was one of the actors they considered for Aragorn though. I was pulled into an argument with someone that agreed with me, but just didn't like the way I said it. It had to be said his way. The majority of my arguments with my wife. I get to argue with my mom about whether or not I'm angry every time I talk to her. Why do you have an attitude? I don't. See? Right there. Yep, cause you're sitting here telling me I'm angry when I'm just playing with my phone. Whatever. I don't know why you always have to argue. I've had a variant of this conversation every week for the last 15 years. My entire family thinks I am arguing whenever I speak. I don't get it. I told someone that the Romance languages are called as such because they were derived from Latin. She insisted that it was because they were romantic. Who in their right mind would call Romanian romantic? I had an argument with a sub-teacher about my name. I have a name that is gender neutral, but it can also be a nickname for some girl names. It was 10th grade and our teacher had just had the names each kid asked to be called by in her book for roll call. So the sub was asking each kid for the first name. When she got to me, she was saying that there is no way that was my real name, it was only a nickname and she would not call me by it. After several others told her it was my name and this lady still trying to say that there was no way a parent would give a girl a boy name, I got up and walked out of class to the office and told them to call her and tell her what my legal name was. Because she was too stupid to listen to me and I was not going to have her calling me something else. I'm named after my grandpa and proud of it. I got her apology when I got back to class. I do not understand why people argue with others about their own names. Not saying yours is stupid, but even if the name is stupid, it's their ducking name. Better respect it. Back in high school, my friend was trying to tell me Alaska was its own country and Guam was a state. There's this girl in my class at school and she thought Alaska was in Europe. She also thinks that a B grade stands for bad and A grade stands for average. I was eating a pickle at lunch. In high school, I referred to my pickle for some reason in the conversation. My friend said, "That's not a pickle, it was a pickle, a normal, big crunchy dill pickle. It looked exactly like the pickle you're picturing right now." I asked her what she thought it was, and she said it was a cucumber. I said that she was right, but that it was also a pickle. She disagreed. I asked her what she thought a pickle was. Then, if not the thing in my hand, she couldn't answer. It was the weirdest argument ever. Around 4th grade, I was at lunch, and I saw my friend take my Butterfinger out of my lunchbox and she spent the entire 20 minutes trying to convince me it was hers. In 5th grade, a classmate stole a pencil from my backpack and refused to admit it. My name was engraved on the pencil. My mother insists that fish aren't animals, that they are their own kingdom like fungi or plants. We were out to dinner and I insisted that we ask our waitress what she thought, to get some support. She said, "Oh, this is perfect. I'm a bio major actually, so I know she's right. You'll learn about it in college." And 8 years later, here I am on the other end of college. My mother still pridefully reminding me how she beat me at that argument. My cousin also believes that if her parents never met, she would still be alive, just in 2 different bodies. I didn't want to touch that one though. This family is a can of worms. Maybe she thought your mum wouldn't tip her if she didn't agree with her. My ex-girlfriend and I got into a pretty heated argument about where the bedsheets should be stored. Personally, I just thought that her putting them down with the canned foods in the kitchen didn't seem to make as much sense as putting them with the curtains and towels in the bathroom. But apparently that makes me an idiot. You're both morons. Clearly, sheets have to be stored in the fridge or oven to keep them cool or hot when you want to use them, depending on the season. On whether I've seen a particular movie or not, I tell her I'm recording Thelma and Louise because it's about time I've seen it, and she tells me I already have. She remembers we watched it together. I know for sure that we did not. There's no way the entire movie erased from my memory. I never won that argument when it happened. Fine. Then I'm watching it again if that makes you happy. I worked at a startup that was quite abusive and toxic. This girl was going on about how eating baby animals is sad. I agreed. I said that's why I don't eat veal. Then her and this other girl ganged up and told me that veal was deer. I then say that this is venison, not veal. Veal is baby cow. They laughed at me and told me I was wrong. Whatever. Then she started going on about how I'm a hypocrite anyway because I eat eggs all the time. At this point I was pissed. I tried to explain how eggs can be unfertilized, but I'm the office idiot at this point. About a month later I was in for my review. My numbers were fantastic and I definitely deserved a raise, and I was told that my behavior at times was disrespectful, with this exact instance being referenced, because both girls were my superiors. People go to school and put themselves into debt only for this shit to happen. Marital fights are a special kind of stupid. My wife and I got into a fight over how much is too much dishwashing soap on a sponge. Another time she thought that I had put used Kleenex in my in-law's car ashtray, which I didn't and wouldn't. I showed her the empty ashtray. This offended her. She said something nasty and I replied in turn and started a fight. Since then she's gotten slightly better on picking fights and I have gotten slightly better on not playing tit for tat. Last night I was laying in bed and my wife accidentally sat down on my knee. We argued about whose fault it was for 20 minutes. It didn't turn into a fight, but my wife tried to climb over my legs to get into bed and went on my leg and hurt herself. It was apparently my fault. I didn't move. She knew where my legs were, but my fault. I got an argument when I was around 8 that some ants have wings and some don't. That was the whole argument. This kid absolutely refused to believe that some ants have wings. It ended with him headbutting me. A girl tried to convince me that hiccups are caused by the gallbladder. Her argument points. Then why do people with no gallbladder never get hiccups? Why can you Google gallbladder hiccups and get results? Can you explain exactly how hiccups and gallbladders work? No? Then that means I'm right. Can I explain either of those? No. But I know I'm right. I spent a lot of time arguing online with a guy over several things. He kept moving the goalposts. Whether taxes were higher in the US than most other rich countries. I told him they're not and linked to a source. Then whether taxes were at an all-time high in the US historically. I told him they're not and linked to a source. And more dumb shit like that. Like how getting a raise means you'll get taxes more and subsequently wind up with less take-home pay. You won't. That's not how progressive taxes work. It's never worth arguing with an idiot, folks. A buddy and myself once argued for 3 hours on the subject of if the Kool-Aid man was the glass pitcher or the liquid inside. My science teacher in 12th grade, yes, she was teaching senior high school science, tried to tell us that if a car is going one way at 60 miles per hour and the wind was blowing the other way at 30 miles per hour, that it would look like the car was going 30 miles per hour to somebody standing still. I tried to give her an out, saying, do you mean the road is moving, not the wind? But she insisted that, no, she meant the wind. She also thought that the world was 2,000 miles around. Lifting weights makes you bulky. Somewhere along the line men or women were taught that if they lift weights a few times a week they will all of a sudden turn into Mr. Universe. You won't get bulky, but you will finally develop that ass you've been hoping will magically appear. I want to get toned. Okay, lift some weights then. I don't want to get bulky, just toned. I'll just hop on the elliptical instead. Whoa, she looks so great. How do I look like that? Do you have testicles? No. Then lifting weights won't make you bulky, so shut up and squat. I played the flute back in middle school. I was waiting for my dad to pick me up one afternoon. Holding the case containing my flute, a kid came up to me and asked about my piccolo. I told him it was a flute. He proceeded to argue with me that it was actually a piccolo, and he knows it can't be a flute. No, it didn't matter that me, the person that actually played the instrument, said it was a flute. He clearly knew better. English is just a trend. I forgot how the subject came up. But one time I implied that sometimes women on their periods have emergency situations where they have to stuff some toilet paper in their underwear until they can get their hands on some proper supplies. A guy argued with me until he was blue in the face that nobody ever does that and it's unhygienic and vile and disgusting, and if I ever did that I was nasty and the only person on the face of this earth who had ever done such a thing. I offered to call several people who I knew would all confirm that it's not that uncommon of a thing. And he refused that because they'd back up my lies because women always stick together when it comes to bullshit like that. I refused to argue with him about any further, and he took that as him winning the argument. I got a phone call from a jewelry store telling me my ring was ready. I explained that I didn't have a ring there and have never done business with them. She proceeded to argue with me that yes you do, because when I asked if this was first name, you said yes. I explained that my name was indeed first name, but that it still isn't me she's looking for. If it's not you, then why did you give me this number? She said with a checkmate tone. I didn't really know how to respond and just hung up. Whether or not they ran a 5-minute mile when they were 13. We were 15 when this argument happened. I was so frustrated because I knew it wasn't possible, but at that time I was still pretty socially inept and didn't know it would have been better to just drop it and not be a dong. After all, I was basically launching a full-out verbal assault on the state of someone's fitness. I just had a lot of trouble believing a normal 13-year-old girl could run a 5-minute mile. Edit. Not saying that is impossible. Just that I couldn't believe a 13-year-old girl who didn't do any sports or athletic activities could match championship runners. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.